We're going to start with the Amr bin As radiallahu anhu. بكل عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الانبياء وعلى اله الازكياء واصحابه الاتقياء. اما بعد. In our previous class, we were discussing the narration of Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. He was with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he had a moment of learning from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam took each individual into consideration while addressing their questions and guiding them. And the part that we focused on in that particular riwayah was how at the end of it, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said to him to not share what he had learned from the Prophet of Allah with others. That what I've told you in this moment, keep it to yourself. However, Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, before passing away, then shared that narration of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to others, so that that knowledge would not be lost, out of fear of being held accountable for hiding and concealing knowledge. And the last discussion we had was how not everything is for everyone, how not every conversation every person needs. It's healthy to be told sometimes that this is not appropriate for you. Today's internet world is such that every small detail, every issue, of every nuance, and every ikhtilaf is spilled onto the internet. So now you have naive young minds who many of do not even know the basics and fundamentals of their deen, are distracted from learning what they need to know, and are now focusing on this new soap opera drama business, where this scholar put this video out, and that guy is going to make a refutation, and then this person is going to write do a video or write an article, blog, or whatever it is that they're going to point out, and it becomes a whole season of just back and forth, and people are just feeding and consuming this, waiting for the next refutation. There was a young man who was very close and dear to me in his mid-teens. He approached me once, and I was with him, and he started telling me about, he said, "Shaykh, what is your opinion on this?" And he told me about something that happened on the internet. And then said, after that guy wrote this guy did a video, and that guy did a refutation. And then those random people who decide to do their videos that have nothing to do with anything, but they're kind of doing the sharh of what's happening for the dummies. People who don't know what's going on in the drama, they give you the update. But this is the khulasa of the new drama going on right now, the TLDR people. So he was giving me the whole, all the detail of everything. Someone very dear to me. So he said to me then at the end, so what do you think about this? What's your opinion? So I said to him, my opinion is you need to leave the internet and focus on your a'mal, be regular in the masjid, build a relationship with Allah, focus more on your dhikr. All these things that these people are talking about, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not ask you any of them on the day of judgment. These are, as we call it, fuzul bateh. These are extra things. You need to focus on yourself. Because ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you about your a'mal. And I say to those du'at and those scholars as well, respectfully and humbly, I am in no position to advise anyone other than myself, but just a piece of advice for us all, that this is very inappropriate. To be having intricate conversations that are purely academic in nature in front of an audience that may not have the fundamentals of their deen down. The Jum'ah khutbah is not a place to create confusion. The online arena is not a place to create confusion either. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when addressing the crowds, he kept in mind who he was addressing, who he was talking. And therefore you find that in the Jum'ah khutbah, generally speaking, the content was around spiritual development. As a result of that, the Shafi'is in their madhab necessitated the statement ittaqullah from the khatib, that in order for the khutbah to be complete, there must be an encouragement of consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is a fundamental of the khutbah, because it was so regular in the khutbah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There are some discussions that happen from here, from the mimbar and mihrab. And then there are other discussions that happen not here, they need to happen in classrooms. And the people that are in those classrooms need to be appropriate for the conversations that are occurring there. So this is very important, what our Shaykh was saying, that one of the most amazing things about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was his mardam shanasi, understanding individuals, seeing who is capable of what and what their capacity is, not overestimating, neither underestimating someone. Therefore, when you speak to them, your words affect their heart. Right? So, as we continue this discussion, how Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam spoke to individuals, the Musannif alayhi rahmah shares some narrations. He narrates the riwayah of Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi in his Musnad from Abdullah bin Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu. كنا عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فجاءه الشاب. We were once sitting with Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم and a young person came. فقال يا رسول الله أقبل وأنا صائم. May I kiss my spouse while I'm fasting? فقال لا. Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم said, no. فجاء شيخ, an old man came. قال أقبل وأنا صائم. May I kiss my wife while I'm fasting? What did Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم say to the second person? No. فَنَظَرَ بَعْضُنَا إِلَى بَعْضٍ. And the companions say that we started looking at each other. Like, clearly there was a contradiction there. A young person came and asked, may I kiss my wife while I'm fasting? The Prophet of Allah said no. Then another person came and he said yes, in the same gathering. فَقَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ قَدْ عَلِمْتُ لِمَا نَظَرَ بَعْضُكُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ. I know very well why you looked at one another. إِنَّ الشَّيْخَ يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ. He said the older man will be able to control his desire, and the kiss won't turn into anything beyond that. As for the younger person, he may not be able to control himself. This is far-sightedness. Where you're giving the ruling, that the truth is, if you ask a faqih, a jurist, what is the ruling of kissing your spouse while fasting? By consensus, they will say it is not from the mufsidat as-sawm. By consensus, there's no ikhtilaf on this. Everyone will say this does not nullify the fast. Now, is it makruh or not? Well, that depends on the individual. In some cases, it's disliked because it may lead to something that will invalidate the prayer, the fast, intercourse. Or in other cases, it may not be because there's confidence that these people are in a better place and they will be able to control themselves. So not every ruling should be shared with every individual, and you need to keep in mind who you're talking to. Similarly, he narrates a hadith from Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala, from Abdullah bin Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu. He says, جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يستأذنه في الجهاد. A person came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam seeking permission to go in jihad. Everyone was going for war. He said, you know what, I want to go too. I want to knock someone's teeth out. فقال أحي والداك. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, are your parents alive? قال نعم. He said, yes. قال ففيهما فجاهد. Then go and do jihad in your parents. Here, jihad is being used literally, not technically. Here, Rasulullah is saying, now go and strive in serving your parents. Bear in mind, this wasn't the advice that was given by Rasulullah to other Sahaba. Other Sahaba came to join the army. Of course, we need you. But this young person came and Rasulullah gave a different response to him. To this, the ulama, they write that it's very possible that Rasulullah telling him to not go in jihad was due to the Prophet of Allah knowing his family circumstances, that his parents may have needed him. His parents would appreciate his presence. Therefore, he taught him to prioritize that jihad will come for you when the time is right. Right now, prioritize and go to your parents. How Rasulullah is giving advice to the individual. Similarly, the next narration is also from Abdullah bin Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu, narrated by Imam Muslim. قال أقبل رجل إلى نبي الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. A person came to the Prophet of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. قال أبايعك على الهجرة والجهاد أبتغي الأجر من الله. That I want to do hijrah and jihad. Two things. I want to give allegiance to your hand and be committed to hijrah, moving from one place to another place, and jihad, to go in the battlefield. فقال هل من والديك أحد حي? Is there anyone alive from your family? قال نعم. بل كلاهما. He said, yes, both of them are alive. Mom and dad are both living. قال فتبتغي الأجر من الله. The Prophet said, and you are still looking for reward from Allah? Question mark. Like, you want reward from Allah? قال نعم. He said, yes. قال فارجع إلى والديك فأحسن صحبتهما. Then go back to your parents and serve them. Take care of them. Your ajr is right in front of you. And this is another beautiful lesson, that sometimes we may look for exotic, difficult things to do to earn our Jannah, while in reality, paradise lies right in front of our eyes. It lies in the easier things. People will go to Shaykh and say, can you please give me some tongue twister, malakut jabarut dhikr, that I will do and in return earn my Jannah. And when the Shaykh says that, as-salatu li waqtiha, that is pray your salah on time, and make time for your dhikr and salawat, they say, this is no good Shaykh. We want the real Shaykh. Because they're not happy with the fundamentals that were given to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the reality of such a person, unless they change their attitude to the deen, is that they will continue to search for something that in reality doesn't exist. And whatever it is they're searching for will not deliver them to anything meaningful. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaches the Sahaba, stick to the fundamentals. This is where your growth is. If you've ever played a sport, or I don't know, if you're into jiu-jitsu like some of us are, or I don't know, any other form of art, whether it's archery or even firing a firearm, one thing you'll notice is that as you progress in your journey, in your sport, in your art, if you have a good instructor, the one thing they'll keep saying to you is focus on the fundamentals. And you could literally be at level 100, 10 years later in that field. I'm telling you, as someone who enjoys jiu-jitsu, 10 years later, I remember I would go to my coach and I would say, how do I modify this position? And he would say, focus on the fundamentals. And it reminded me of the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he always brought everyone back to the fundamentals, that focus on the fundamentals. That's where the benefit is. So then he says, Shaykh Abdul Fattah, هذا ما عرف عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من الحظ على الجهاد والهجرة والترغيب فيهما. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told that person to focus on his parents, even though we know that in other narrations, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam emphatically encouraged the companions to go for hijrah and to take on the gruesome and difficult yet courageous task of jihad. Even though those fada'il and those virtues exist for hijrah and jihad, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is telling them, you need to focus on your parents. ولكنه صلى الله عليه وسلم لاحظ حال هذا السائل بخصوصه فرأى بر الوالدين أهم وأفضل في حقه من الجهاد. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam observed the questioner very carefully, and he saw that in his life, obedience and khidmah, service to his parents, was what needed attention. And this is important for teachers too, that you focus on the student, the individual, not just in terms of answering their questions, but what they need. Sometimes a student will say to you that, Shaykh, I have a break coming up. What are some extra readings that I can do during my break? And the teacher may say, no reading for you, take a break, go meet your family, do not pick up a book, relax, get away from your studies. Because that's what that student needs. Otherwise, they'll face full-blown burnout. And other times, the teacher will say, no, instead of reading something new, why don't you revise something else? Sometimes the teacher will say, just focus on your parents. Other times they'll say, go get a job while you're on break so you can earn some money and lessen the burden from your parents. The teacher should have an intimate relationship and connection with the student where they understand them. One student comes late to class, the teacher may say nothing, because they understand that that student is carrying the burden of the world on their shoulders. Another person doesn't come early enough for class, the teacher may scold them. You only came 5 minutes early, you should have been here 1 hour earlier. Why is that? Because father's person, no marriage, no children, no job, no nothing, and still coming only 5 minutes before class? This is not appropriate. You should come way earlier. Right? So there, as we say, that the ruling actually is dependent on the individual. And that must be taken into consideration when you are dealing with human beings. Because at the end of the day, we are human beings. Everyone has their own challenges. واختلاف أجوبة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لاختلاف أحوال السائلين وظروفهم وقدراتهم باب واسع له أمثلة كثيرة في كتب السنة المطهرة. He says there are many other examples of this. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam answering the companions and guiding them based off of their individual needs. ومن ذلك وصايا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم المختلفة لأناس طلبوا منهم الوصية. Similarly, continuing this principle, how Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam took the individual into consideration. Now he says, when we look at those scenarios where the people, so the earlier examples, just so we can differentiate, the earlier narrations were about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam answering questions or guiding people. The second set of narrations are to do with someone asking the Prophet ﷺ for explicit advice. Advise me what to do here. The third set of examples that are going to come after this are going to be where someone asks Rasulullah ﷺ, which is the best of deeds? That specific question. And when people ask Rasulullah ﷺ for advice, he didn't give everyone the same advice. This is important. Someone comes to you, I need to get my life straight. What should I do? You say to that person, go 40 days to Tabligh Jamaat. Another guy comes, I'm struggling with my marriage, what do I do? 40 days to Tabligh Jamaat. One guy says, I have a heart attack, I'm really sick, what do I do? 40 days to Tabligh Jamaat. There is no one solution to everything. Every person has a different solution. To one person, you may tell them that Tabligh is what you need to do, buddy. You need to get away from this busy life and go spend some time in the masjid in the path of Allah. You go and sacrifice for the sake of Allah. Allah will put khair and barakah in your life. To another person, you may say, buddy, you need to take a break from this, and maybe more of an umrah type person, send this person on umrah. Another person, another prescription. Every person has their own prescription. You have to learn to guide people to different paths. The nuance of the human being can never go missing. There is no such thing as one size fits all when it comes to human beings, specifically dealing with their solutions. And the people who think that one size does fit all in all situations and circumstances fail to understand that human beings differ in their physical capacity. One person is capable of standing and praying, so Sharia says do that. Another person isn't capable, so Sharia says sit down and pray. Another person is incapable of sitting, so the Sharia says lie down and pray. Earlier today, I was having a conversation with one of my students over the phone, and he was describing to me certain pains, physical pains that he experiences. And he said, Shaykh, what do I do about these pains? And I said, well, from a medical perspective, I have no advice. But from a spiritual, religious perspective, don't let your pain define you and make you walk away from your ibadah. You will need to adjust yourself. And regardless of whatever you end up agreeing is physically appropriate for you, it may be that you have to lie down flat with your mouth shut and do dhikr with your heart. Maybe that's what you need to do. But whatever you do agree upon, physically what your body can bear, what I need from you is consistency. You have to make sure you do that every single day. Right? Your leg's hurting today? Adjust. Sharia does that. That's the beautiful of it. That's the beauty of it. For those of you who have studied usul al-fiqh, the principles of Islamic law, the fuqaha talk about this, that when things become narrow and difficult, Sharia opens up, creates an opening for people. So now we look at some of these advices of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first one is narrated by Imam Ahmad and Tirmidhi, rahimahullah ta'ala, from Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu. The interesting thing about this particular narration, Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi narrates it in his Arba'in. This is one of the narrations from the Arba'in of Imam Nawawi. When Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi narrates his hadith, he narrates it from two companions. Like the author here is narrating it from Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu, and then he also narrates it from Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. The interesting thing is both of these companions independently narrate this hadith. They did not hear it at the same time. This is important. Both of these companions did not hear this hadith at the same time. I explained this issue and this context while teaching the Arba'in al-Nawawi from our masjid, so the recordings are online. You can benefit if you'd like to understand the backdrop to the riwayah. They both heard it at separate points, and they both say this was the last advice we heard from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They both say this was the last advice we heard from the Rasulullah. So in this riwayah of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu, قُلْتُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ أَوْصِنِي, I said, O Messenger of Allah, advise me. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gives advice specific to him. قال اتق الله حيثما كنت وأتبع السيئة الحسنة تمحها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. Be conscious of Allah wherever you are. Remember that your Allah is with you. Regardless of whether you're in school, sitting in the masjid, at work, at the dinner table. You have to learn to understand this reality that your Allah is always with you. And as you come closer to that realization, mark my words, a stillness will overcome you. An excitement will enter into the heart. This is a result of the ruh celebrating you coming closer to the purpose of your creation. Finally, Faiz is waking up. This is the truth. The ruh is happy in that moment. Have you noticed that when someone talks about the mahabbah of Allah, a stillness comes on the gathering? Sometimes tears swell up in the eyes. The heart speeds up a little. Someone shares a story of someone dying in sajda. Your heart aches. That was me. This in reality is your ruh pushing you and telling you, this is the way, this is the way, this is the path. Connect yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why He created you. Ittaqillah haythuma kunt. Be mindful of Allah, be conscious of Allah wherever you are. And this is a lesson that you can learn from a very young age. Consciousness of Allah is something that you can learn from a very young age. It's not something that you have to learn as an adult. One day my kids were saying to me about how do we deal with temptations while we're on the tablet or we're on, a phone. How do we avoid wasting time and doing things that we're not supposed to do? And Ahmed is here, I advised them. I said, Beta, I can give you advice on how to deal with temptation. And, maybe we can put some parental app on there and help monitor and engage. But all of that is useless. Why is it useless, guys?
Find a way around.
Yeah, because Amin is a smart guy. There's no app that's going to keep Amin out. Human beings are intelligent. They'll find a way around it. Right? They'll always find a way around it. The only real solution that I said to them is consciousness of Allah. Khuda ka istihza ho, that my Allah is with me. You'll fail. You'll forget. Shaitan's doing his job. But you have to build your taqwa muscles. You have to build the presence of Allah into your heart. وَأَتْبِعَ السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ تَمْحُهَا. Follow up bad deeds with goods. They will erase them. وَخَالِقِ النَّاسِ بِخُلْقٍ حَسَنٍ. And interact with people with the best of character. The next one is the riwayah of Bukhari and Tirmidhi. So in that riwayah we see how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave specific advice to Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu. The next narration is from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, narrated by both Imam Bukhari and Imam Tirmidhi. He said a person, أن رجلا قال للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أوصني بشيء ولا تكثر علي لعلي أعيه. O Messenger of Allah, advise me and don't make it too long, keep it brief. Now immediately you would think that's disrespectful. He should just say, advise me and walk away. Why is he dictating terms to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So he clarifies himself, the questioner, لا تكثر علي لعلي أعيه أي أحفظه. That, O Messenger of Allah, keep it brief so I can remember it. I want to act upon this. I want this to be something that I really, really, really do. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's response to him was, لا تغضب. What did he say to him? لا تغضب. Generally, we translate لا تغضب as do not become angry, which is correct. It's the right linguistic translation. But there's a deeper meaning behind the statement. Badr al-Din al-Aini rahimahullah ta'ala, in his commentary on Sahih Bukhari, because this is the Bukhari narration, in his book Untitled Chapter, he quotes from Allama Khattabi rahimahullah ta'ala the following passage. قال الخطابي معناه لا تتعرض لأسباب الغضب. Do not become angry. What that actually means is, do not allow yourself to be in circumstances where anger overcomes you. لا تتعرض لأسباب الغضب. وَلِلْأُمُورِ الَّتِي تَجْلِبُ الْغَضَبِ. And don't be around affairs or matters that will cause you to get angry. If you know that you're someone that gets angry if you're too hungry, then eat a little food every now and then. If you know that meeting a particular person makes you angry, stay away. If you know certain circumstances make you enraged, then avoid that. لا تتعرض لأسباب الغضب وللأمور التي تجلب الغضب. إذ نفس الغضب مطبوع في الإنسان. Because anger in itself is natural. مطبوع في الإنسان. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the human being with anger. لا يمكن إخراجه من جبلته. Therefore, it is impossible to remove anger from the human being. And neither should you remove it. It's not a good thing to remove anger. Everyone should have some anger. If someone swears at your mother, you should have anger. If someone swears at your father, you should have anger. And then he says, أو معناه, or this statement لا تغضب means لا تفعل ما يأمرك الغضب ويحملك عليه من الأقوال والأفعال. That don't give in to the urges that come into existence when you're angry. This is what it could also mean. That when you get angry, don't give in to your anger. Don't say things, don't do things in that moment. And then Rasulullah kept repeating this, do not get angry, do not get angry. The ulama, they say that it's possible that Rasulullah gave him this advice because there may have been complaints regarding his anger, or Rasulullah observed this in him. The next narration is from Bukhari and Muslim again, rahimahumullah, from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. أن أعرابيا جاء إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله دلني على عمل إذا عملته دخلت الجنة. A Bedouin came and said, O Messenger of Allah, guide me to an act that if I engage in it, I will enter paradise. فقال يا رسول قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم said تعبد الله لا تشرك به شيئا وتقيم الصلاة المكتوبة وتؤدي الزكاة المفروضة وتصوم رمضان. Basically, he gave him the pillars of Islam: Salah, Saum, Zakat, Hajj. So he said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ لَا أَزِيدُ عَلَى هَذَا شَيْئًا أَبَدًا وَلَا أَنْقُصُ. O Messenger of Allah, I will commit to this. I will do my best, and then stick to it. So there, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave a comprehensive advice to Abu Dharr, right? The second person, one specific point, more to do with character. To this third person, the fundamentals of Islam. Let's stick to the fara'id of Islam. فَلَمَّا وَلَّى, when this Bedouin left, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من سره أن ينظر إلى رجل من أهل الجنة فلينظر إلى هذا. Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم said that whoever wishes to see someone from the people of paradise, look at that person there. If he sticks to his statement and is committed, he will find his Jannah. The next narration is narrated by Imam Tirmidhi and also by Imam Ibn Majah from Abdul bin Busr radiallahu anhu. أن رجلا قال يا رسول الله إن شرائع الإسلام قد كثرت علي. So many things to do. There are so many things in Islam that I have to do that I'm overwhelmed. You guys ever feel that way? Like so many things that I need to get done. إن شرائع الإسلام قد كثرت علي. So many things. فأخبرني بشيء أتشبث به. Give me something that I can stick to. Basic, simple. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's advice here. Yarhamukallah. One of my favorite advices of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of my favorite statements. Are you guys ready? It's beautiful. You're going to do Amal on it, inshallah? Inshallah? لا يزال لسانك رطبا من ذكر الله. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's advice to him was, keep your tongue moist with dhikr of Allah. Hardam zikru fikr bi-uzri. That every moment of mine is just spent in your remembrance. Halqa se nikale, saans ke badale, zikr tera hai mere khuda. That, oh Allah, my dream is that instead of my breath, your remembrance emerges from my throat. That's the state I'm going to be in. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gives such a simple solution. Hayd, no hayd, nifas, sihha, marad, safar, iqama, all of it's irrelevant. As long as you have halatul yaqadan and you are alert, you can do the good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I say to my youngest son, Mahmoud, because he goes to public school, every day you have recess. When you go on the swings, see if you can dedicate 30 seconds to the remembrance of Allah. Just 30 seconds. When you go to the library and you're picking a book, just try to remember Allah for 10 seconds. You need to learn from a young age that the remembrance of Allah is something that's a part of your life wherever you are. لا يزال لسانك رطبا من ذكر الله تعالى. Similarly, the next narration by Imam Muslim and Imam Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah from Sufyan ibn Abdul Fattah radiallahu anhu قال قلت يا رسول الله قل لي في الإسلام قولا لا أسأل عنه أحدا بعدك. O Messenger of Allah, tell me something that I can do that I will not have to turn to anyone for guidance after this. One thing. So what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? قل آمنت بالله ثم استقم. that say I believe in Allah and then commit to that statement. Follow through on it. In another narration of Ibn Majah, Sufyan ibn Abdullah al-Thaqafi, he says, قُلْتُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ حَدِّثْنِي بِأَمْرٍ أَعْتَصِمُ بِهِ. O Messenger of Allah, give me something that I can hold on firmly to, that I can act upon. قَالَ قُلْ رَبِّيَ اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to him, say, my Lord is Allah, and then commit to that statement. قُلْتُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ مَا أَكْثَرُ تَخَافُ عَلَيَّ. He then asked the second question, O Messenger of Allah, what's the one thing that you can warn me about of myself? What's one thing I should be extra careful of? فَأَخَذَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ بِلِسَانِ نَفْسِهِ ثُمَّ قَالَ هَذَا. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam held his tongue and said, this right here. This is what you need to watch out most for. وروى الترمذي عن عقبة بن عامر رضي الله عنه. Imam Tirmidhi narrates from Abdul bin Amr رضي الله عنه. So many narrations, I'm just quickly going through them. Uqba bin Amr. By the way, each of these narrations are from the Jami' al-Adab. I mean, we can dedicate an hour to each narration, just briefly understanding the content, not even going through it in detail, because they're packed with so much. And Uqba bin Amr رضي الله عنه's narration, قلت, this is also one of my favorite narrations. I love this narration. Remember this if you can, the students especially. This is from Uqba bin Amr رضي الله عنه. قال قلت يا رسول الله من نجات. He said, O Messenger of Allah, where is salvation? How do I find salvation? Where does salvation lie in? You guys know salvation? What does najat mean? Najat means nothing. How do I save myself from the fire of hell? So to that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said three things. قال أملك عليك لسانك. Control your tongue. وَلْيَسَعْكَ بَيْتُكَ. And let your home suffice you. Right? There are many ways of understanding the statement, but one way is that, try to stay at home as much as possible because it's a controlled environment. When you step out of your home and you go to the mall, you don't control what you see, what you hear. It's out of your control. And that also teaches us that our homes should be places of ibadah and worship and righteousness and piety as well. You should make a habit of reading hadith at home every night before you go to sleep. What we refer to as ta'lim. That before you go to sleep, read some hadith at the Prophet. وَوَابِكِي عَلَى خَطِيئَتِكَ. And learn to cry over your sins. وأحاديث أخرى من هذا الباب جاءت فيها وصائل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الجامعة المختلفة مراعاة لاختلاف الأحوال السائلين وحاجاتهم. I've explained this point already, that there are many examples of this, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked for advice, and his advice differed depending on the individual. Again, that's the main point of this chapter. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam speaking to individuals. ومن هذا القبيل أيضا أجوبة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم المختلفة حول أفضل الأعمال وحب الأعمال وغيرها. And similarly, we have narrations, again, focusing on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam giving answers to the individual based off of their questions. The question here that we're addressing is, أَيُّ الْأَعْمَالِ أَفْضَلُ? Which deed is the best? This question was asked to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He gave different answers. So now we have some narrations here too. Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim rahmatullahi alayhi narrate from Abdullah bin Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu أن رجلا سأل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أي الإسلام خير؟ قال تطعم الطعام وتقرأ السلام على من عرفته ومن لم تعرف. A person asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what's the best practice of Islam? So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said two things. What are the two things he said? Number one, تطعم الطعام, feed people. It seems as if Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's advice to this person was focused on community development, building community. That you've been with the people for long, but have you really been with them? And this is an advice I give all of you here. If you ever have a dream of being an ummah, you'll need to act upon this riwayah. You have to stop walking in and out of the masjid without greeting other people and having a meal with them. Say to a person next to you, let's grab coffee together. Invite someone over to chai to your house. I know it's awkward, I know it's weird, it's not an American thing to do. We are a very individualistic society, and to our own detriment, unfortunately. Step out of your comfort zone. Be a family. And then give salam to the one who you know and don't know. Similarly, the riwayah of Muslim from Abdullah bin Amr radiyallahu anhu. Another person asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which Muslim is the best? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say? Man salima, guys are quiet. Man salima al-muslimuna min lisanihi wa yadihi. Which Muslim is the best? The one who other people are safe from his hands and his tongue. That's the best one. And people they read this hadith, and what's the first thing they say? When people read this hadith, they say, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, you have to be kind to Muslims. I don't have to be kind to non-Muslims. Because he said, Man salima al-muslimuna min lisanihi wa yadihi. So Shaykh Fattah Ghuddah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he points out the flaw in this statement. And he says that it seems to me that there should be a greater emphasis on giving safety and security and peace to non-Muslims. Why is that? This is because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in one hadith said that the one who violates the right of a dhimmi specifically, I will deal with him on the Day of Judgment. He'll have to face me. So Shaykh Fattah says that, and think of it from a point of da'wah. Muslims say, I won't cheat Muslims, but I'll cheat non-Muslims. Is this what our deen teaches us? Is this the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ. The next narration from Bukhari and Muslim again, from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, سئل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أي الأعمال أفضل? Which of the deeds are best? To that he said صلى الله عليه وسلم إيمان بالله ورسوله قيل ثم ماذا؟ قال جهاد في سبيل الله قيل ثم ماذا؟ قال حج مبرور. Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم was asked what are the best of deeds. What was his first answer? إيمان بالله ورسوله, belief in Allah and the Messenger. ثم ماذا? Then what? What did the Prophet say then? Jihad fi sabilillah, fighting in the cause of Allah. ثم ماذا? Then what? Hajj mabrur, Hajj maqbool, inshallah. An accepted, a righteous Hajj. That's the way to go. The next narration from Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim rahmatullahi alayhi, on the authority of Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. قال سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أي العمل أفضل. I asked the Prophet of Allah, this is Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, right? One of the senior companions. He's been with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to some historians, the sixth person to accept Islam. Shuru from the beginning. And he's asking this question. I mean, if there was anyone that was going to get some super sophisticated prescription, it would have been him, right? Would you guys agree? How long has he been with the Prophet of Allah? His whole life. So he says, I asked the Prophet of Allah, أَيُّ الْعَمَلِ أَفْضَلُ? Which is the best of deeds? وفي رواية أَيُّ الْأَعْمَالِ أَحَبُّ إِلَى اللَّهِ قال الصلاة لوقتها. The Prophet ﷺ said, pray salah on time. ثم أي? I asked which one next. He said, بِرُّ الْوَالِدَيْنِ, be kind to your parents. ثم أي? What next? الجهاد في سبيل الله, jihad in the path of Allah. فما تركت أستزيده إلا إرعاء عليه. He said, I wanted to ask more, but I didn't, because I didn't want to cause Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam any inconvenience. As I was asking him, naturally, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had to put effort into answering. And I knew every time I asked him, I was putting him in inconvenience, so out of consideration. Where are those students going? That are willing to hold their questions back out of consideration for the teacher. I'm telling you, next time you go to a dars, you'll notice that as soon as the Shaykh finishes speaking for 45 minutes, the whole crowd comes and surrounds the table with questions. The poor man must be exhausted after speaking for 1 hour, 45 minutes. But the Ibn Mas'uds don't exist anymore. They would say, La ir'an alayh, that I didn't want to give him any convenience, so I asked him away. Someone asked Imam Malik a question once. He was in the streets. Imam Malik said, this is against the adab of ilm that we talk about it while we're just walking around. There are gatherings for that. Wait for your turn. But then the student says, but I won't get the answer to my question. Well, that's a part of the journey, buddy. Unless literally it's a farda ayn issue that you will engage in haram by not knowing the answer, then in that case, go and ask your question. But if it's not a farda ayn issue, you have to know that it takes time to get questions answered. It's a part of the journey. There are times where we waited for months and even years to get an answer from our teachers. These days, alhamdulillah, we have open access, text message, and everything else that's available. But there was a time where that wasn't the case. As students, if we had seen a dream and we wanted interpretation of the dream, our Shaykh al-Hadith, Shaykh Yusuf rahimahullah ta'ala, at times would interpret dreams. But the method of asking that question would be, you would write your dream in a letter. This is before email. You would write it down on a piece of paper. You would then fold it, put it inside an envelope. And then, in a bigger envelope, you would put a piece of paper in there, a pen in there, and an envelope addressed to your own name. So if the Shaykh felt he needed to write, he would not need to find a pen or a paper. He would just write on whatever you had given him, put it inside the same envelope, and your name would already be on there, and he would give it to any student, give it to so-and-so student, and his name is on there. And at times, those letters would pile up on his bench. You would walk past the Ghuddah and you would see the letters there, and see your old stamp sitting there somewhere, or see your envelope, and you know it's there. And it would take months sometimes to have a dream or any question answered. But that was the ir'an alayh, that you would wait, because the student shouldn't be entitled to any answer now. Like Taco Bell Islam. That I order it there, and by the time I come around the corner, jawab tayano. Everything's ready. وروى أبو يعلى عن رجل من خثعم قال أتيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو في نفر من أصحابه قلت أنت الذي تزعم أنك رسول الله قال نعم قال قلت يا رسول الله أي الأعمال أحب إلى الله. So he starts off with some beautiful language. Go on, you can read it. I mean, if you have that riwayah open, you have to read it.
English?
Yeah, read the English.
No.
It's a little longer. You'll read it for us, inshallah.
Abu Ya'la narrates on the authority of a person from the Kath'am tribe who said, I came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam while he was with a group of his Sahaba. I said to him, are you the one who claims to be a messenger of Allah? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam replied, yes. I asked, O Rasulullah, which deed is the most beloved?
Someone else, if you say that to them, they'll get angry. But the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, yes. Are you the one that claims to be the Prophet of Allah? Isn't that a little much in a question? Right? The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam didn't give much attention. Yes, now. Go ahead.
I asked, O Rasulullah, which deed is the most beloved to Allah? He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam replied, belief in Allah. I asked, O Rasulullah, then which deed? He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam replied, maintaining family ties. I asked, O Rasulullah, then which deed? He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam replied, commanding good and prohibiting evil. I asked, O Rasulullah, which deed is the most disliked by Allah? He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam replied, ascribing partners to Allah. I asked, O Rasulullah, then which deed? He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam replied, severing family ties. I asked, O Rasulullah, then which deed? He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam replied, commanding evil and prohibiting good.
Keep on, finish up the chapter.
There are various other hadith of this nature wherein different replies were given to questions concerning the most virtuous and most beloved of deeds. The difference in these replies are based on the differences among the individuals and groups or the occasions when the questions were posed. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam informed each questioner according to his need, the aspect of Islam he had not yet perfected or which had not yet reached him, that which he had an inclination towards, or that which was appropriate for him. Alternatively, he informed the questioner about that which was more virtuous than other deeds at the time of his question.
Yeah, so a person is asking one question, but Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's hikmah baligha was such that he would give a different answer. An answer that was more needed. What was going to help that person? Go ahead.
For example, jihad was the most virtuous of deeds in the beginning because it was the means towards upholding and fulfillment of other deeds. Various proofs support each other in showing that salah is more virtuous than zakat. However, at the time of siege, the needs of a person who is in distress, zakat is more virtuous. Some of the differences in this regard could be attributed to the differences in the words of the questioner and in the consideration given by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to various reasons which demanded preference. These are not confined to one specific attribute or dimension, but are diverse in nature. Further, the rank and status of virtue and good are different. Hence, the differences in the reply in some ahadith could be based on the consideration which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave to the individual differences between the various pretexts of preference and virtue. It is not appropriate to explain these at this juncture. It suffices to say that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught and guided to the right way with insight and foresight. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam enlightened people according to their needs and what was appropriate for them. May Allah Ta'ala send salutations and peace on him and his family.
Alhamdulillah. With that, we finish off that chapter. The next chapter, he takes us through the next teaching methodology of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us life and tawfiq, we will continue this session next week. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد. السلام عليكم.